Well, good morning. I wanted to start with an excerpt from a spiritual book by Richard Bach. The name of the book is Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And in this particular part of the book, he has a dialogue between Richard, the author, and Don, who is a spiritual guidance for him. And they're talking about the concept of magnetizing, which you'll see sounds remarkably like what we're studying in the book that we're reading right now. So, Don says, to bring anything into your life, imagine that it is already there. Like what? Like my lovely lady? Anything but not your ladies. Start with something small at first. So I'm supposed to practice now? Yes. Okay. A blue feather. A blue feather? Well, you said anything, not a lady, something little. He shrugged, fine. A blue feather. And then he said, imagine this blue feather. Visualize it. Every line. Visualize the edge of the blue feather. The tip, the V splits. Is the feather torn? Is there fluff around the quill? Hold that vision just for a minute. Now let it go. I closed my eyes for a minute and saw an image in my mind, 5 inches long, iridescent blue, to silver the edges. A bright, clear feather. There it was, floating there in the dark. Don continued, surround it in golden light if you want. That's a healing thing to help make it real, but it works in magnetizing too. So I surrounded my feather in the golden glow. Okay, that's it. And Don said, open your eyes. So I opened my eyes. I don't see any feathers. If you have it clear in your thought, it is, even in this very moment, barreling down upon you like a Mack truck. Really, a blue feather like a Mack truck? Figuratively, Richard. Well, all that afternoon I looked for the feather to appear, and it didn't. It was evening, dinner time, over a hot turkey sandwich, that I saw it. It was a picture, along with some small print on the carton of milk in front of me. Packaged for Scott Dairies by Blue Feather Farms, Bryan, Ohio. Don, I found my feather. He looked and shrugged his shoulders. I thought you wanted an actual feather. Well, it's a feather, anything for an opener, don't you think? Did you see the feather all alone when you were visualizing it, or were you holding the feather in your hand? He says, oh, I saw it all alone. That explains it. If you want to be with what you're magnetizing, then you have to put yourself in the picture too, holding the feather. I'm sorry, I didn't think to mention that before. And Richard continued, a spooky, strange feeling. It worked. I had consciously magnetized my first thing. Today, a feather. Tomorrow, the world. We are reading the book E Squared by Pam Grout. If you weren't here for the previous Sundays, it's no problem. We have our lessons available on our website, and if you don't have web access, you can always request a CD near the book and gift shop. And we also, I think, still have a couple copies of the book now available also in the book and gift shop. So this week we're focusing on chapter 4, which includes, of course, experiment number 4, because each of these chapters has an experiment where you're supposed to be able to prove that indeed there is this spiritual substance in the universe that will manifest whatever you want. Now, Pam Grout calls it the field of potentiality. You know, in Unity we talk about a spiritual substance, which in many ways, when you consider what traditional Christianity thinks of as the Holy Spirit, it's always present, always ready to fill into your ideas using your imagination. So chapter 4 is titled The Abracadabra Principle, Whatever you focus on expands. Where have I heard that before? Right, I've talked about that pretty regularly. So wait a minute, abracadabra principle, we're talking about magic here, right? Well, sort of. The abracadabra principle is a practical application of what Jesus taught. In the Gospel of Matthew, 11th chapter, starting with the 22nd verse, Jesus says, "Have faith in God. Truly, I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and does not doubt it in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have already received it, and it will be yours." Is that magic? I thought it was interesting, though, that what does Jesus use as an example? Picking up a mountain and tossing it into the sea. I mean, that's big. So I think manifesting a blue feather should be easy enough to do, right? And I think that was part of the point. And of course, that was the old tradition, too, especially in the Jewish tradition of exaggeration. But the key here is that when you have a need, knowing that that need will be filled, that somehow, some way, the substance will come, whether it is health, whether it is occupation, whether it is relationship, or whether it is a financial supply, or just that ongoing spiritual growth, that ongoing awareness that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, Jesus spoke the language Aramaic. It's related to Hebrew, which, of course, is what a lot of the Old Testament was originally written in. But the word abracadabra actually comes from Aramaic. The word abracadabra means, I create as I speak. I create as I speak. Abracadabra, I create as I speak. And of course, in Unity, we talk about the 12 powers, in that the gift of spiritual power, of translating this substance into manifestation, is our voice, being able to speak it aloud. And I actually have a handout in the friendship room showing you the 12 powers and the 12 disciples that correlate to those powers. So, will it materialize out of thin air? Well, maybe, maybe not. I have found in my life it's generally more of what I would call a coincidence. And of course, coincidence is God in action, that spiritual substance manifested. Building on the previous chapters of E squared, of course, we talked a little bit of just a quick overview of quantum physics, how everything is vibrating energy. Even if it looks solid, even if it's steel, it is vibrating energy. We are vibrating energy. Our bodies are vibrating energy. And so we can use this creative energy of our minds, connected to the divine mind, and speak aloud, using our imagination to really create the things that we desire. Now, in the book, Pam Grout quotes Abraham Hicks as saying, "It's as easy to manifest a castle as it is a button." Pretty similar to Jesus. Cast this mountain into the sea. The key here is just, do you believe it is possible? It amazes me how when people start to learn the prosperity principles, they'd rather prove their old belief rather than a new belief. You see, the truth is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? But having a human experience, you need to have stuff. Now, there is, of course, a danger in that you might accumulate too much stuff, and I'm guessing that might be part of what Dana and Aaron are dealing with this week. When God gives you the gift that He's given you this week, there's probably that sense of, I think maybe we have too much stuff gathered around. But Jim Rosemerty, who's a Unity minister, has been a Unity minister since 1978. He now serves in Fort Myers, Florida. He's written a handful of books, and one of his books is Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. So yes, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but as a human experience, you need to pay the bills. We're living in 21st century United States, and we do need things. We need housing, we need food, we need clothing. These are all things that will be demonstrated for us, provided we believe it's possible. And the amazing thing is how this spiritual truth has been taught generation after generation after generation. There are books you probably have heard of that are 70 or 80 years old, like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, Wallace Wattles' The Science of Getting Rich. There's always that hook of, like Carla and I used to tease when we were traveling around doing the prosperity seminars. Yeah, God is sneaky. God will lure you in by talking about riches and prosperity. But what you really learn is that amazing spiritual richness of knowing that if you are indeed one with Spirit, that all your needs will be met without any worry, without being too concerned about creating a lot of material stuff. Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. Claude Bristol, The Magic of Believing. And these books are still in print. I mean, I think about how many books that were just published 5 years ago that aren't in print anymore. These are in print because people keep buying them. People keep borrowing them from the libraries, just wanting to know the spiritual truth that Pam Rout is now bringing to a new generation in E Squared. And of course, his unity, the unity movement has been bringing to people for 125 years. The word desire means of the Father. So occasionally we might have a fleeting thought or a whim. That's not that big of a deal. But if you've got this desire that just kind of hangs with you, then it's something that you need to demonstrate. It's something you need to put out there in the world. The challenge is a lot of us think of something as being too frivolous. In Chicago, of course, a lot of the older neighborhoods of Chicago were built before the concept of people having automobiles had really set in. There were a lot of neighborhoods that have apartment buildings and stuff because everybody would jump on the bus or on the electric train to go downtown in Chicago. So trying to park your car on the street, unless you had a newer building that had a garage in it, was a bit of a challenge. And so in Chicago, we talk about manifesting a parking place. Does it seem too frivolous? Well, it isn't if you've got an appointment and you need to be in a building at a particular time. So you would just imagine somebody pulling out of a curb spot on the street just as you just happen to be driving down so that you can pull into that spot. But it was something that was a truly, something that affected the daily life of people in Chicago. Now, in the one of the challenges that we have is that as we were younger and growing up, we were taught that this stuff doesn't work. Right? I mean, I know I was. And so the fact that we are trained otherwise, and I'll hear people say, we need to be realistic. Well, realistic means look at the outer appearances and don't believe this stuff anymore. So when we're focusing on the outer appearances, are we willing to let go of proving the old stuff correct? Would you rather prove this concept, the abracadabra principle, or would you rather prove, something that you were trained out of, back maybe when you were 6 years old? As I mentioned, Pam Grout talks about the field of potentiality. And one of the analogies she uses in the book is going from Biloxi, Mississippi to New Orleans, Louisiana. It's roughly 92 miles, so it'd be a 92-minute drive or a 31-hour walk. But she says, the key is if you're going from Biloxi to New Orleans, then go from Biloxi to New Orleans. Focus. Every moment you're headed in that direction. One step after another. Cover some ground every minute. Yes, you'll need to pass through some stuff to get there. No need to panic, just keep walking. Focus on what is before you, not what was behind you. Focus on this trip rather than on previous trips that perhaps you didn't finish. If you get bored, think about the future rather than the past. As Yoda said, try, there is no try. There is do or not do. It is okay to desire to be in New Orleans rather than talking yourself out of it. There's no need to feel guilty. Everyone should have the opportunity to go to New Orleans. So Pam Grout kind of walks us through there. Our thoughts and beliefs, though, need to be connected with something to really get the engine revving, and that is to connect it with your feelings, your passion. Being able to pour your passion into what it is that you desire. To be willing to feel it and see it as there right now. Now, if you think this attitude is totally foreign to you, I disagree. Most of us have been very carefully trained in putting our passion into a thought, feeling it, and knowing it. It's called worry. Right? When you have worry, can't you possibly picture yourself with the worst case scenario happening? right? You know how to do this. The problem is, can you do it with a more pleasant outcome? Put your passion into it. Say, yes, I feel it. I feel it. So, rather than worrying about what other people are thinking or paying the bills, can you imagine what it would be like to have all of your bills paid in full and on time? Another important key is focus. On page 72, Pam Grout writes, "The only reason we don't change water into wine or heal cancer with one touch is because our thoughts are scattered all over the place. Instead of being one constant, well-aimed tuning fork, our thoughts are more like a junior high school band of beginning trumpet players." Right? I mean, think about the pinball machine of your mind. I mean, it's just boing, boing, all over the place. I'm going to have Jessie put up a slide. On page 75, she does a little section talking about how our minds work. And she gives 4 examples. Number 1 is the rut. It has been estimated you have 60,000 thoughts during any given day. The challenge is that 98% of them are repeats from the day before and the day before and the day before. Number 2, the madmen. It's estimated we see between 1,500 and 3,000 ads or logos per day. Carl and I laugh about, of course, being a former radio, TV news guy, I still like to watch the evening news. But the evening news are supported by pharmaceuticals on parade, right? You've got all of the various drug ads, and of course they tell you, are you feeling sick? Are you feeling scratchy throat? It's like, what are you doing to me? Well, what they're doing is giving you the need to go buy their product. And of course, remember back about 10 years ago, restless leg syndrome. It was a totally manufactured illness so that they could sell a particular pharmaceutical. Later, it was all just debunked. Number 3, others' thoughts. If we are all vibrating energy, it is true that we can pick up on other people's thoughts. I mean, especially in Unity. Most people come to Unity have a pretty well-developed intuition. So, you can pick up on the vibe, right? But when you pick up on the vibe, are you willing to ground it, or are you going to hop on that horse and ride it a long way? So if it is a negative or an unpleasant vibe. And then, of course, number 4 is our own thoughts. We tend to talk ourselves out of things. And as I've been coaching people through this process, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So when I first started with this, I thought I had to be thinking positive 100% of the time. If a negative thought floated into my mind, I had failed. It isn't about thinking positive 100% of the time. It's thinking positive 50.1% of the time. Get yourself to that point of critical mass, where when the negative stuff comes in, it's much easier to just catch yourself and just brush it off. That's just part of life, but it's for some reason, it just seems to be a necessity, for us to just kind of, over time, prove, spiritual principle rather than this old stuff, these old tapes. So rather than thinking that we're unworthy or that a desire is too frivolous, are we willing to demonstrate it? Now, another point in manifestation that I love that Pam Grout mentioned is being careful that we aren't too desperate about something. Are we putting the energy into desperation? Because desperation has this real inverted quality to it, in that rather than truly focus on what it is you'd like to see happen, you're actually focusing on the flip side. What if it doesn't happen? So recognizing that shift, that tightness, and just being willing to relax. I remember reading an article about 20 years ago of a chaplain who was in France, and he worked at the Lourdes Spring. Now, many of you are familiar with Bernadette, Lady of Lourdes. She dug in the dirt, and all of a sudden a spring well started to bubble up, and people found that if they immersed themselves in the water or put water on themselves, that it would heal them. So every day, thousands of people go to Lourdes to see if they could be healed. And the chaplain said it's interesting because he had been there for whatever it was, like 30 years. He says, I saw a definite pattern as to the people who were healed. The people who were healed came there and they were at peace with their illness or their ailment, or maybe their disfigurement. He says they were at peace with it. But they were open and receptive to releasing it now from their lives. Because those were the people who'd be healed. People who came in desperation generally left disappointed. But the people who were like, yeah, I see the lesson in this. I see the good in this being in my life, but now I'm ready to let go of it. I don't need it anymore. Those were the people that were healed. What a wonderful lesson. So this week, chapter 4 is the abracadabra principle. What does abracadabra mean? I create as I speak. So the question by Pam Brout is, can I demonstrate things simply by thinking about them, holding that thought? So the key here is to choose something. As we learned from Richard and Don earlier, okay, choose something that you believe you can receive within 48 hours. So this will be something within 48 hours. And you'll need to just kind of pick that starting time and go for it. And I love, Pam says, the approach or the attitude you're going to bring to this experiment. Well, I have scanned over the big catalog called the world. And for the sake of this experiment, have decided that this is what I intend to manifest at some point in the next 48 hours. I will focus on it with all of my being, and I will remember what Abraham Hicks said. It is as easy to manifest a castle as it is to manifest a button. Now, our closing story today is a little bit longer than the typical video I showed, 6 minutes long by Steve Hartman of CBS Evening News. But it's about a young woman who had a desire. She knew what she wanted. And when you know what you want and you step out there with an intention, it is amazing how other people, other things, the world comes together to help you meet your desire.
A lot of kids live for basketball, but for 19-year-old Lauren Hill, who started playing in 6th grade and immediately fell in love with the game, she is literally living for basketball.
She's chasing a dream, and she wants people to see that they can do that.
Her dad, Brent, and her mom, Lisa, say over the years, Lauren has thrown herself into a lot of different things.
110%, no matter what it is.
She's always done it.
But they've never seen her commit to anything like she has with basketball this year. Playing on a team even though she has a brain tumor, the size of a lemon, and growing daily. Her cancer is terminal. When it was diagnosed about a year ago, she had one question for her doctors.
Can I still play basketball?
That was your question.
I wanted to wear that jersey and feel like a superhero again, because that's what I feel when I put on the jersey and that number.
22. Everyone where she lives near Cincinnati, Ohio knows that number. Everyone at Mount St. Joseph University, where she's a freshman, knows of her incredible commitment to this team. The girl has just weeks to live, but she still gets up at 5:30 a.m. for basketball practice. She can't even do most of the drills anymore, but she still tries.
Because I feel like I'd be a quitter, and I don't like being called a quitter. I gotta be here with my team.
Her attitude is remarkable. Only tears we ever saw were of joy when she read about all the people supporting her favorite charity called The Cure Starts Now.
So awesome.
Curing pediatric brain cancer is one of her 2 top priorities. The other is simply to live long enough to play in her first college game.
And we'll let her play the game that she loves. That's Lauren. She wants to play this game.
Coach Dan Benjamin says their first game is a week from Sunday. Normally about 50 people would attend, but he says this one is already sold out. 10,000 tickets gone in an hour.
How do you imagine that game? My staff and I got a play put together. We're calling it Lauren's Layup, and the crowd going crazy.
Sounds like a good plan.
I think so too. You got one heck of a teammate right here.
I got one heck of a team.
To make sure Lauren would get a chance to play, the NCAA moved the Mount St. Joe season opener up 2 weeks. They also got a bigger gym to accommodate the 10,000 people who bought tickets.
I can't wait for her to look up in the stands and see all the people, her friends and family. You're going to see it in her eyes, just how happy she is to finally be on the floor.
It's gonna be like a really, really touching moment. I'm really, really excited that so many people care enough to come.
The crowd was thrilled just to see her set foot on the floor. And that's really all anyone was expecting. Lauren just doesn't have the energy to run down the court more than once or twice. Which is why her teammates wasted no time getting her the ball. It was the first basket of the game. Lauren came in again near the end and scored the last, bookending this remarkable fairy tale.
We will remember that layup forever.
Today's been the best day I've ever had. Thank you guys so much.
But while most news cameras were either focused on the celebration at center court or the crowd of 10,000 cheering fans, our cameraman noticed something else remarkable. He zoomed over and caught the reaction of the opposing team. A reaction that went so far beyond good sportsmanship. We just had to meet them.
I can't even really describe it. I don't know, I was just overcome with happiness, really. Most happy feeling I've ever felt of an opponent scoring.
Come on, girls.
They are the Hiram Terriers from Hiram, Ohio.
Go!
And what they showed on the court that day surprised even their coach, Emily Hayes.
I have my girl in bounding the ball, like wiping her eyes. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And the thing is, I didn't teach them. I mean, I can't prepare them for that. It just shows the kind of people that they are.
Fact is, no one deserves more credit for making Lauren's moment possible than the women of Hiram College. This team not only offered to move the game up 2 weeks, they surrendered their home court advantage. They wanted Lauren to be able to play in front of her friends and family.
Today's been the best day I've ever had.
As a thank you, the night before the game, Mount St. Joe took Hiram out to dinner, something unheard of in college sports.
Their team took us in. They acted like we were their family. And we laughed together, we cried together, we all hugged. It was like a big family of huggers there. It was awesome.
That goodwill extended throughout the entire game.
Yeah, and at one point in the game, one of the girls, I shot a 3, and she was like, that was a great shot. I'm so glad you took it. And I'm like, it's like unreal.
Should we be borrowing this, taking some of this into the rest of the basketball season?
That's how I feel. I'm like, I just want to play games like that every time.
Certainly, if college sports were a little less cutthroat, kids might learn that real winners aren't decided by scoreboards. And true character isn't defined by how often you make the highlight reel, but rather how you behave when you think nobody's looking. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Hiram, Ohio.
And I want to take a moment to emphasize that point again. If you have a desire, you will be amazed at how everyone around you wants to help you achieve that desire. From the Gospel of Matthew, 11th chapter, 24th verse. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. May you always be open to God's guidance and grace. It is now time for our tithes and offerings. So if you give electronically on the website, on the donation tab, just hold that amount in mind. I'm going to invite the ushers forward, and as you take what it is that you're going to give, either in mind or in hand, and let's invert the worry principle and truly feel what it is like to every day know that your needs are met, your obligations are fulfilled, and your desires are demonstrated. Open your heart and pour love into your offering today. And then let's say the affirmation on the screen together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and I am grateful.
Shanti Shanti Om. Om Shanti Om. 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 Shanti Shanti Om.
Michelle Qureshi, great back.
This is a brand new song called Dreamer of the Dream.
See